Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about some stuff that came out of the whole thing around Anita Sarkeesian at Vidcon, because quite frankly, the way that we look at some of this stuff, and considering the panels that she was actually on, I wanted to weigh in on this because this is something that I've experienced, I've been around, I've seen an awful lot of, I have coached people through, and so as a result, the facts of what happened and why they happened just really bug me, and so I want to get into that. But first off, a couple of thoughts from me personally, because you have the first one, which was women online. Well, fine. Where's the kind of ridiculous double standard there kind of annoyed me in the first place, because it's so hard to be. Well, no, actually it isn't. You can look at the figures, you're going to see an awful lot more in the way of kind of positive response to female faces and whatever else. There have been recent studies done that demonstrate that we gravitate towards women's voices and so on and so forth right over men's. And yeah, there's a reason for that, and it's called evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology. If you hear a woman making noise, or you hear a woman kind of calling for you, it's either because they are caring for you, or you need to care for them, in which case you're going to respond, you're going to go to it, you're going to move towards it on instinct. And this has been demonstrated by several studies. If I can find some of them, if I remember to find some of them after I've finished this video, I'll leave them down in the description to take a look at. But the thing that kind of jumps out at me from there is that she turned it into a conversation around harassment, and then on top of that, she then jumped on someone in the audience with her words, with being very condescending, being very negative, when all they were was present. Then, though, we jumped to the panel on the following day, which was all about cyberbullying. And now this is where I want to get on to the actual point of this video, which is intellectual bullying. Because she couldn't just let Boogie have his say. It had to be said in the way that she wanted him to say it. Yeah, he had to support her narrative and the things that she wanted to say. The other thing that stands out to me, though, is that none of those people from what I could see on the panel, you've got some people who, maybe have been to university, maybe have done this, maybe have done that, and have been YouTubers for however long, but I didn't see anyone there who was actually. They all seemed to be YouTubers. I didn't see anyone there that was an actual kind of person who's going to be there for anti-bullying generally. Yeah. And I could be wrong on that. I did just glance through who was in attendance, and I only recognised a couple of the names. But again, it just seemed strange to me that you'd have a panel like that and it's all anecdotal. There's no one there with expertise. There's no one there who's dealt with those problems or who's working through it, other than purely from a first-hand experience. And that's never going to be reliable, because you're always going to have your own slant on it. Boogie's a very anxious person. Anita is obviously a very aggressive one. And so as a result, though, I wanted to address this, because the bullying is a problem for kids, sure, but it's a problem for adults as well. And it's usually kind of taken down to only a couple of different ways that people get bullied, and those don't necessarily always include kind of the things that have been going on here. And so, we're looking at bullying. There are usually three types, and they, people regard them differently. Obviously, the one that everyone knows about is physical bullying, where you'll have the stereotypical big kid on the playground going around like assaulting someone for their lunch money or something like that. And that is generally seen as not acceptable. That's wrong. That is assault. It is against the law. It's a negative thing. And obviously in reality it can be a mix between self-defense and whatever else. There are so many facets to kind of the physical bullying thing and how it's perceived. But again, that is very much a thing that everyone's within reason is going to go, yes, that is a negative thing. That is actual bullying. Then you've got the very the thing that still pops up a lot in work, more so than other things, as well as in school, where it's much more social bullying, where it's spreading a rumor about a person, where it's talking about them behind their back, where it's ostracizing them, where it's putting pressure on them through other people, and that kind of pushing down on someone through the way that you handle their life. If you're a manager and you're shitting on someone because of the way that, and you're bullying them through the way that you're handling their rota when they have things that they require in life that aren't just work and sleep, and then you've got the ones who are literally teasing, winding people up, spreading rumors, damaging their reputation. That's a very kind of, I don't know, Mean Girls-esque kind of form of bullying that, again, most people will go, that's not very nice. It might not be picked up on as often as physical bullying, but it's often just a kind of, that's not very nice, that's not the way that it's supposed to go. Be friendly, just have some manners, don't be a dick. But then we've got the last one, and this is the one that I feel applies to what happens at Vidcon, what happens to in all manner of other places, and it just gets left. And this is the much more mental, much more intellectual form of bullying, where you've got someone who is intelligent, or at least seems intelligent, we'll get onto that in a second, who will kind of come in within their field, within their area, and they will crap on people. They will be dismissive, they will be disrespectful, they will be mean, they will be emotionally abusive through the way that they attach meaning to what they're saying, and dismiss the way that it's that someone else is putting something across, and being very kind of condescending and negative towards that person, as if they're not worth their time, for no reason whatsoever. And this has been called a kind of a celebrated thing, where you've got people like Dr. House, being this way. But then again, he's also he's there for laughs, granted, but he's also never shown as a particularly positive character. He does positive things, but he is negative. He is negative through and through. And this is spelled out time and time again in the show, that what he does and how he does things is not good. If anything, I would say that that's a great representation of an intellectual bully who then gets to the end of things and has to give up on it, because as much as he's so embedded in it, he ends up not getting anywhere with it. He ends up alienating people around him. He ends up without support, and it becomes a big deal for him. It's also the fact that intellectual bullying is usually left as a thing that isn't picked up on has been kind of a kind of negative brought against kind of meritocratic cultures. But the problem is the way that I would disagree with that, though, is that meritocracy is very much about the right person in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And so you can do that without being intelligent. Intelligence doesn't necessarily make you the right person with the right set of skills doing the right thing at the right time. Yeah, so I would potentially disregard that. But we get there was a where is it? There was a thing put out a few years ago in 2000s, which here we go. It was in an article called "Ranking Bullying Types," and it was by an individual called Joe Bouchard, and this is what they said of intellectual bullies. They said, the intellectual bully specializes in condescension. Their insecurities are masked in large words and aloof, arrogant sentences. Their offense consists of a belief that they are smarter than the competition. They enjoy making others feel inferior. Now, I read that and I was thinking, yeah, actually, that spells out pretty clearly what has happened over the last over VidCon with Anita Sarkeesian, right? These two events that have been brought into the spotlight, because she's obviously very insecure because someone sitting quietly in a crowd causes her to come out as a big outburst. She's very negative towards that person. She's very arrogant in the way that she says things. She dismisses him and his worth straight away, even in spite of the fact that he hasn't done anything to draw the ire in that moment. And so, she puts it across in just a very direct way, and then she hijacks the rest of the panel to talk about harassment and these other things, instead of sticking to purely the women online element of things. She had her cyberbullying panel the following day. She could have kept all of that and talked about it then, but she decided to derail and roll the women online, where potentially you would have had an awful lot of young women actually going there to hear about the kind of ways that these women that were on the panel had experienced their development online, how both the goods and the bads, and yet all they got was this one line kind of run of things, from what I've seen and heard. And so it's a really odd situation that she caused there, that definitely spells out her arrogance and her dismissiveness and her insecurities. But then you get to the following day, and with the situation with Boogie and that panel, and I mean, I kind of looked at that and I went, I kind of feel sorry for Boogie anyway, especially after watching his videos on it, where he's saying that he was very, very anxious for an awfully long time about it. He does seem like a very anxious individual anyway, quite thoughtful on the way he says things and what he says. And he seems to genuinely just want to be a nice guy and not offend anyone. And yet, then he's already on the back foot. But then, in the way that she tries to correct him, or the way that she says, "No, you're not what you say you are," where he said he was a cis white male, and he was trying to say it to make a point. She corrects him to say, "You're not that, but you are obese." And it's like, well, no, hold on. So you're saying that you're so smart, that you're able to categorize him, and he got it wrong. He got it wrong, and the things that he said were incorrect, because she corrected him on where he was saying, I try to promote. She was saying that you need to fight, and he was saying, no, I want to promote love and connectivity and conversation. We don't need to fight. And so she's correcting him, and she's making him feel inferior, and she's pushing him off. And then he goes, yeah, well, she was willing to come and sit with me afterwards. Well, yeah, of course she was. She was looking for more information to use, more things to pull in, because with an intellectual bully, someone who's specializing in condescension, in being arrogant, in twisting things and manipulating things in such a way that when they are said, they come out meanings being taken in a different way than they originally were said, and stuff like that. When you're being that kind of, when you're doing that kind of mental dance, then you still need a tune. You still need the new steps to follow. So she's sat there and she's listening, sure, but she's not listening for you. She's listening to gain more power for herself. She's not doing any favors, and I feel like this is a much broader problem than just Anita Sarkeesian. As much as she is very much someone that has embodied all of this within 2 days at a very, very public event. The problem with this is that people in these situations kind of they tend to have been put in them very early on. Yeah, they were maybe not particularly well off when they were younger. They were not, because these are learned behaviors. So they were either maybe picked on, or they were bullied by themselves. They were feeling inferior in different ways. And so as a result, the only strength that they had was their superiority in terms of kind of mental attributes and so on and so forth. And so as a coping mechanism, they would collect with people that were similarly kind of crushed, but they would then take control of that. Yeah, they would then use they would be very sensitive, very thin-skinned, very highly reactive, and the way that they would react would be to outfox or to kind of dance around the defenses of someone who maybe wasn't as mentally powerful, so that where they might hurt them physically, or they may make them feel bad in a plethora of different ways. They would do harm in such a way that it was invisible, that they would be able to get away with it, and that would be it. And now the problem with this, though, is that then when these people get into adult life, they continue to do the same thing because it's a learned coping mechanism. It's a learned way of doing things. It's that verbal artillery sat on the walls of their little kind of shanty fortress that doesn't hold up to any real punishment. That verbal artillery, that intellectual power that they have, just pointing that at someone makes them move away. It keeps them safe. But here's the thing: it then also destroys relationships. It opens you to further attack, because when you hit adulthood and you're not dealing with children anymore, and people learn and people grow, and people's perspectives broaden. Once you're dealing with more people who are like that, then your verbal artillery doesn't matter anymore. The long words are easily ignored. You're having to rely an awful lot more on direct interaction with people, be they work colleagues or friends or loved ones. You're having to make sure that you're maintaining those relationships and those environments, because otherwise, if you don't, then you're alone, and a person who is completely alone unfortunately doesn't get anywhere. It can be hard enough when you're working hard with a group of people and you're still not getting anywhere due to other larger groups being in the way or leaving things for you that are causing you problems. Being by yourself, just like purely by yourself, doesn't really lend any strength to you at all. It doesn't really lend you any backup support, additional power, additional voices that sing in concert with yours. It doesn't lend to any positives if you isolate yourself all the time. It doesn't allow for an expansion of ideas or anything like that. And so then how do we deal with these people? If we're kind of coming under fire from these people, well, simply put, the way that I would say that you deal with someone like this isn't necessarily by taking revenge, but it is by just removing yourself, yeah, or if possible, removing them. And so this is where I have the issue with the kind of professional side of things, which I'll talk about in another video. But in regards to the code of conduct for the event and for the panels, I feel that this kind of behaviour, which sits very clearly and very obviously to me with a very intellectual form of bullying, and make very easily painting Miss Sarkeesian as the perpetrator here. It's very much a case of she's acted unprofessionally in this manner at a very public event, and yet she has faced no reprimand for it, and when she should do. She should be removed from this situation. She should lose this platform because she was unable to act within the code of conduct. Fairly straightforward. However, obviously dealing with these kind of people in kind of the moment-to-moment parts of life, or in work or whatever else, the only way to get these people to change is to have them want to change, to have them make the realization that if they continue to act this way, then their coping mechanisms that worked for them so well and became so ingrained are not going to help them anymore. Anything, as I've said before, anything that worked for you in the past doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you right now, and it might not work for you in the future. And so there needs to be that kind of realization. And so as a result, it's a case of getting these people to treat everybody like equals, allowing these people need to find their way to evolve. And at times the only way that can be encouraged is by really just leaving them in an empty space, and unfortunately, due to the fact that thanks to the way that Ms. Sarkeesian has conducted herself since she became so famous / infamous online, She has that following that may very well not leave her alone because of their tribal inclinations. And so, as a result, in her case, she's probably never going to evolve, or at least it's going to be very limited in the way that she evolved, and it's going to be more likely due to pressure on her livelihood or things like that, rather than just a genuine interest, a genuine care for what she's doing, how she's doing it, the people she's interacting with, the people she's alienating, because she really doesn't seem to care. She stood up in front of a very large crowd and lambasted one individual in the front row for the sake of it. It's that taking a step down from that kind of arrogance and finding some humility is a stretch for her. And I would imagine the as a result of her being used to gathering people around her and kind of spewing this kind of thing and having all of them go, go you, it's not going to change anytime soon. But the lessons that we can take away from this about people who do the same thing, very much a case of, there's something to be said for argumentation, for a clashing of minds. You can grow from that, but purely being condescending, purely not treating people as equal, purely kind of trying to make out that you are smarter or that you have the last say on things when you may not have that authority. As said, the cyberbullying panel where she kind of put down what Boogie was saying, she's not an authority on that. She's just apparently another victim, in which case her word is as good as his, but she's the one that gets the final say. As far as she's concerned, and as far as the conversation went afterwards, she was able to touch in on those things with him on her terms and on her terms alone. And so these people that act in this way are only ever damaging, as with any bullying. And so the takeaway needs to be these people need to be left alone. If they want to be alone with their thoughts because they're so mentally powerful and so mentally capable and they're going to be able to do everything and whatever else, and they don't even need to back up what they say, that they're so smart, then yeah, fine, leave them to it. We'll leave them off to one side and we'll get on with the rest of everyone else will just get on with the rest of their lives. Yeah, that's the lesson to take away, because that's all we can do, because for them to change, they need to want to change. They need to see the differences that they need to make themselves, because otherwise they're not going to do it. A lot of people who do this for their entire lives, as is demonstrated in-house, end up in therapy because of how isolating their behaviours are, because of how negative they are, and because of how ingrained it is to reprogram themselves in such a way to become more functional, to become more sociable, to become more useful and helpful to both themselves and people around them. They need actual professional help for this. Be it a coach that helps them set out their new way of dealing with things, or an actual therapist, an actual psychologist to sit down and help them work through how they got there and move beyond it. It's a much bigger thing, and this is just a high profile example of it. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think. Because I know full well that there are people who will go, yeah, but Sargon does this as well. And yeah, I don't agree with all the things that Sargon says, but Sargon actually seems to have a fair amount of awareness and has apologised far more for the things that he has said, the things that he has done at times, than Miss Sarkeesian has. And so on and so forth. There has to be a difference in magnitude taken on the actual actions and the things that they say and the things that they do, rather than purely like their total perceptions. Because when you've got someone, be it Sargon, Mundane Matt, Chris Raygun, any of the other people who were in that front row, Andy Warski or whatever else, any of those people in that front row who have done their research and who were there to listen, to then take away and then maybe rebuke some things later on in other videos, you know, those people, if they're researching stuff and they're actually going, well, actually what you've said isn't the case, then that's not hate, that's a correction. Yeah, that's not hate, that's maybe a meeting of different opinions. And as has been demonstrated by numerous people over the last few days, Sargon in his videos has very specifically said not to harass people, whilst Anita doesn't engage with her audience at all. The most she engages with her audience is by them giving her money and going to these panels where she gets to say what she likes and doesn't engage with them back. So, you know, there's that. But anyway, I realize this is kind of a two-part video, one about what happened at Vidcon, and one about the actual implications and the effects and the way the intellectual bullying kind of takes place. But I feel like the stuff at Vidcon is a great example of this intellectual bullying and how people get away with it. And so I wanted to raise it. I mean, if you guys are interested in more videos on the bullying and some of the more negative things, then, you know, please drop me a comment down below and let me know so I can actually do it. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the videos tomorrow and later in the week. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you found this at all interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.